Hello everyone! Today I wanted to bring you a look at Staxel. Staxel's a game that I've been playing quite a bit just in my own time in order to come up with a good video, come up with some footage, and come up with some opinions because it's part of a genre that I am excited to see more of on PC. Which is something I've decided to start covering more of on this particular series, the sort of, developing genres that we haven't seen on PC for a long time, or ever coming more to PC due to early access and the fact that if you're a developer on that system, you can help that along by, knowing what people want and not being beholden to shareholders and things like that. So I figured one of the things that I could do to help make this series a little better is to focus on things like that, because the system has quite a lot of it. Staxel is ostensibly a Harvest Moon or Stardew Valley style of life sim or farming sim, where you own a farm and you have to, grow things, grow the village, and interact with NPCs, and just make a life for yourself, basically. But one of the best things about this game initially is the fact that it doesn't really feel like a clone, per se, of any individual game in this genre. It feels very much like itself. It is its own kind of game with its own ideas, and that really comes into its own when you start playing to the point where you can build buildings and the like. It doesn't take very long before you're given the task to build a barn to house some cows. And that's when it really starts to feel like its own thing, because although there are lots and lots of sort of up-and-coming games in this genre on PC, there are no others that I've seen, at least, that do it exactly like this game. First of all, one of the initial kind of interesting bits that you can probably tell if you're watching is the fact that it's first person. It is a first person game, whereas generally speaking these games are not third person, they're more like an isometric style of viewpoint, or just top down in general, whether they're 2D or 3D, that's just sort of the classic way to do it. But in this case, it is first person, which gives you a pretty unique view at everything that you're doing in comparison to the way that the games normally do this sort of thing. But more so, this is a game that's very heavily based on player creativity, because what is a very common sort of comparison when it comes to cubes and first person, that of course is Minecraft. Even though Minecraft isn't technically voxel-based, it is sort of the granddad of what we consider, at least now, the granddad of sort of voxel-based building games. And this does take that cue, but it takes it in a very interesting direction. So basically, every time you're meant to build something, or have a building on your property, or upgrade the houses of the villagers, things like that, the things that you would normally do in a life sim like this, instead of buying a pre-built piece of property that you put down somewhere, you actually build it yourself by hand, block by block. And that's sort of the main, I would say, the main focus of the game. Obviously it's about farming, but it's a life sim, so it's about more than that. You have to run a farm, but you also have to do things that keep the NPCs happy. Maybe find a relationship that's not currently in the game yet, but you can still give NPCs gifts and raise their affection towards you. There just isn't anything above that yet. And also explore the world, find resources, craft new things for yourself, buy new things for yourself, make your house better, all that sort of stuff. But in this game, instead of revolving around a more of like a sort of story-based progression, it is instead of revolving around the creativity of yourself and whoever is playing with you, because this game has multiplayer, to build up the town and your farm and everything yourself by hand. Now this is really, really cool, because, like I said, not many games really go for that sort of thing in this genre. In fact, none that I've seen go for it exactly like this game does. We see lots of block-based building games, but not that are also sort of non-sandbox, if that makes sense. And this is sort of an interesting point, because that's something that I thought about while playing it. A lot of games where you're meant to build things yourself are very sandbox games, like Minecraft and other games like that, where what you do and the fun that you make for yourself is very much exactly that. It's made for yourself. You have to sort of make your own fun. Because it's a sandbox, there isn't necessarily any structure overlying everything. There isn't necessarily a goal. It's just the goals that you make for yourself. Like, I want to live in a wizard's tower, therefore I will build a wizard's tower for myself to live in. In this case, though, it is actually a full-on non-sandbox game experience. So you do have goals and objectives and quests and things that you actually solve by using the creative freedom rather than the creative freedom being used to create your objectives, if that makes sense. Which is really cool, because it allows you to have a very different world than pretty much anyone else, because your world will be built by you, so any other, it'll be the same sort of base, the base buildings that are normally there, the town hall, the tavern, and the NPCs that you start with, which, by the way, is not constant and seems to be a little bit different. It's sort of randomly generated. In fact, the entire island that you're on is randomly generated, and I've seen a couple of different examples of how it can turn out, but moreover, your own town will very much be yours, since you have things like NPCs that want to move in. Rather than doing a quest for it, the idea is that you just get a mailbox and you plop the mailbox down somewhere, which will give you the necessary items that should be in it for it to be actually mechanically considered a house and actually is fit for someone to move in. And then it will give you this big box in front of the mailbox that actually shows the bounds in which you have to build it. Now, you don't actually have to stay in those bounds. It's just that whatever it needs, like, bathtubs, wardrobes, bookcases, chairs, lamps, all that stuff, it has to be placed within those bounds to count towards the limit that's required to make it functional. Otherwise, you can build whatever you want outside of that box to make it look like you want. So this means you have a tremendous amount of freedom in the game, actually, to just make things look however you want, and that's really fun. The museum was another particular item that you have to work on once you rescue the museum curator from being a butterfly, however that happens. And once you start working on it, you become sort of enamored, at least I did, with the process of actually wanting to build this up and make it look nice and fitting for the town. And another cool thing is once you actually finish a project and, all of the requirements are there and it's functional as the building it's meant to be, that's not actually the end. Each building will also have this little button at the bottom once you've built it that'll say Tier 1, and then of course you can move to Tier 2, which has even more requirements and makes it even fancier. So that's also something that is technically in similar games like this, the sort of upgraded buildings as you progress through the story, but in this case you actually build the upgrade yourself. It doesn't just look a different way because it is upgraded, it is upgraded because it looks a different way, which is kind of cool, actually. And it allows you to be not just very creative, but also to feel very invested in your town and the NPCs that are there and all the facilities that are available there, because you built them yourself and you have a hand in how the town actually has developed in a very literal way. Another quest that I was given was to build a pet store, because there is a general store and some traveling merchants, but there's no pet store, so instead of having one just appear because of a quest, you actually build it. And as you build it more and more, it will be able to stock more stuff because you will have put in more shelves and things like that. It's a really neat system, and I think that the game is actually going to shine a lot, especially when it gets closer to being finished, in the community that loves the sort of thing, because it combines the very good life sim aspects of games of this nature with a very interesting aspect of structured freedom. The freedom to do pretty much whatever you want, but the structure to keep it within an objective that keeps you going towards specific goals. And that's a very addictive combination. I would say that Terraria is a game that also does that, because Terraria is a game that's very free form. You can build whatever you want, wherever you want, but there are also structured goals that you have to get past in order to progress, and things like, say, NPC houses have to have certain things within them in order to count for a house, and all that sort of stuff. You can build them outside however you want. You can make it a giant whatever, but if you actually want it to work as a house within the giant whatever, you also have to have rooms that make sense. And this allows the game to sort of blossom into a more and more advanced version of what it started as in Terraria's case, because, you'll start with like a little bitty adorable hamlet and eventually end up with like some sort of crazy mega tree of life city or something, and it's just something that you can do, and very few games actually manage that whole sandbox but with structure kind of aspect, and I think that this is going to be another one that's going to do it really well. Currently, the early access actually has a pretty significant amount of content, and it feels like a game that is nearing finished, maybe probably within the year, I would say. I'm not gonna, don't hold me to that because I'm not one of the developers, but what I'm saying is it feels like it has a lot of content already, and a lot of the content that's being worked on is more additive and expanding what's there rather than putting in the base level stuff that needs to be there for it to feel complete. That's already pretty much here. Which is good, because that means the price you're paying is for actually a lot of content already. I've played it for about 20 hours so far, and I'm not even past the first year yet. I have just started the winter event. I don't know what the winter event is, and I still have a bunch of people wanting to move in, and the pet shop to complete, and some more quests to complete. So you know, even after 20 hours, I haven't reached the end of what the early access has, and I have a feeling I'll probably put in like double that before I actually do, at least. So what's already here is very much worth taking a look at if you enjoy life sim games, or basically if you enjoy the Harvest Moon series, if you enjoy Story of Seasons, if you enjoyed Stardew Valley. This is a game that you should definitely keep an eye on, or just go ahead and make the plunge and look at yourself, because it provides the structure of those games without feeling like a clone of any of them, because the new aspects that it brings to the table, the building, the first-person view, are substantial enough to actually put this on its own, which is awesome. And the new updates that are coming also sound very exciting. The sort of updates that are being teased at time of recording involve magic, more magic items and magic-themed stuff, which sounds awesome, because currently it feels like a very fantasy world, like a sort of almost like a Final Fantasy kind of fantasy, because you have a mix of that sort of medieval stasis-y stuff, like taverns and the like, but you also have people with technology, like computers and cell phones and stuff. And you even have airships in the game. Currently, I'm not sure if there actually is an airship that's actually in the game right now, but there is an airship platform in town, and people have talked about airships, the NPCs, when you talk to them, so it's clear that at some point at least, airships are going to feature in this game in some way, which is awesome. I hope you actually get to build your own, to own yourself. That would be amazing. But yeah, so what's currently in it is pretty cool, and I hope that the expansions to the world will continue to add to its feel, its theme, because it's got a pretty unique theme, very much like, you know, Stardew Valley and those games. They all have their own sort of, their own feel to them, their own atmosphere, and this game does as well, with that sort of fantasy but not exactly kind of theme. You've also got not only a sort of magic expansion-y, magic system kind of thing coming in the update, some magic items and just magic themes, but also another idea of islands, the idea that you will be able to travel to other islands, each one geared to specific things, which is great, because that's going to add a ton to the crafting and to the things you can find. Like, for instance, they teased a mining island, an island that specifically you go to that has like giant mines and stuff all over it, and ores and all sorts of things like that that you can only find there, so that, you know, you travel there when you need materials and get exotic things from going there. And that sounds awesome. That sounds like a really fun time, and I want to see more of things like that for sure. You've also got, of course, the cherry on top that is multiplayer. This game is already multiplayer. You don't need to wait for that feature. It's already in, and it works quite well. I plan on bringing you some multiplayer footage if I can, within a fairly reasonable time frame. I can't give exact dates or anything, but I do definitely want to make some multiplayer content. I think it would be fun to actually wait for the bigger update to drop that adds the islands, or at least an island, and actually experience it for the first time in multiplayer and film that. I think that'd be really cool. And I would say that the price that it's at is actually very reasonable. It's $20 on Steam, and they have said that that's the price that it's going to be until release. Like, the release isn't going to make it more expensive, and it's not going to change. So $20 for all this is extremely good value, in my opinion, up there with Stardew Valley level value. That's kind of hard to say, and I can't recommend it enough. Oh, right, I also wanted to mention a little bit of something about the crafting system as well. The crafting system in this game is really cool, very detailed in a way. That it reminds me of a lot of the crafting mechanics that were added by Minecraft mods, not the vanilla crafting in the game, but the way that a lot of the mods tend to do it. It's very procedural. You have to take your raw materials and put them on certain tables that makes them into more advanced materials that you then put on other tables that makes them better. It's really fun to actually do. It can be kind of time consuming. Like, you know, you can grow sugar beets, for instance, and then you take the sugar beets to a slicing table, or it's basically a blender, that slices them up, and then that makes sugar, and then you can boil the sugar to make syrup, and then you can combine some more sugar and some syrup and boil that to make candy corn, and you can sell the candy corn and make bank. That's basically how it works. It's just constantly an evolving crafting system that has all these different kinds of crafting tables for cooking and for woodworking and for stoneworking, and you just sort of... I think one of my favorite things about it is that you don't actually have to know the recipes to make something. It encourages experimentation, and I love crafting systems like that, where there are recipes to help you make things that you might not know how to make, but you can also just slap stuff together and see what you get, so that even if you don't have the recipe, it still makes the thing, whatever it is, if it's a valid combination. The crafting system in the game is really cool, and it's another thing that adds to the whole everything is mine kind of feeling, because you tend to do a lot of crafting for the houses and the museum and everything that you need to make. A lot of it is crafted yourself, which just adds to the sort of, I guess, artisan feeling that the game gives you. It's a genuinely very good game, and I'm definitely going to keep an eye on it myself and hopefully keep bringing content as well. I'm certainly excited for the new updates on the way, and, well, the link is in the description below if you want to check it out. I'll see you guys next time.